Okay, back again. As promised, some chatter here about the Kamala Harris campaign versus the politics of death and doom being put out there by the Nazis in the Trump campaign. And, I can't get past this little bastard, Steve Miller, a perfect Joseph Goebbels minister of propaganda. That's all Stephen Miller is. What an evil-looking fucker. If you saw him on MSNBC last week, I think he was on Ari Melber's program in the evening, usually at 6 o'clock Eastern time. But if you saw this ghoulish-looking son of a bitch, and he's a Jew, how he can do this is beyond me. But there was Stephen Miller, looking like a reincarnation of Joseph Goebbels. The only thing missing was a Nazi SS uniform on this bastard, which I wouldn't be surprised if Miller eventually suggests that such uniforms be adopted by the true believers in the Trump inner circle. And certainly Steve Goebbels Miller would certainly, I think, love prancing around in the SS uniform. Don't you think? I just get that impression. What a hateful-looking little prick. But I digress again. At the top of his first speech, after he was chosen by Kamala Harris to be her running mate, Tim Walz said this, quote, "Thank you for bringing back the joy," end quote. And, of course, it was shortly after that Kamala Harris branded the Democratic ticket, she and Walz, as, quote, "joyful warriors." And Hubert Humphrey's thing was happy warrior. He was a happy warrior, wasn't that? Happy warrior. So if you contrast that with the orange vomit, Christ Jesus, Trump, Donald, God, he opened his news conference at his Winter Palace last week, a couple of days after the politics of joy, joyful warriors was exclaimed or brought manifest into the conversation by the Harris-Walz ticket. Trump, a few days later, said, quote, "We have a lot of bad things coming up." Yeah, well, if one of them is you hateful prick. And he even predicted that we're going to fall into an economic depression unlike anything we've ever seen since the dark days of 1929, or even we're going to be in another war. God. So I guess his message is vote for me and none of this will happen. I mean, give me a fucking break here. Vote for him and all this will happen. It may happen no matter who is president, but guaranteed, if this unconscionable bastard Donald Trump ever winds up near the White House again, bend over, spread your legs, reach around and kiss your ass goodbye, because that's what Trump is all about. And he said last Thursday, quote, "I think that our country is right now in the most dangerous position it's ever been in from an economic standpoint, from a safety standpoint," end quote. Ooh, nothing like uplifting positive thoughts and promises from a potential president of the United States, huh? Now, of course, the Democrats have taken the opposite tack, and I am certainly glad they have. They are. I hope it continues, because I honestly believe that's what we need right now. We need a shot of positivity. We need vitamin hope. What? No, seriously, we really do. The negativity has been going on since 2016. When Trump started his bullshit about Barack Obama wasn't even an American citizen. But remember what he said? "I've got my people in Hawaii researching his birth certificate." Give me a fucking break. This guy lies about everything to everybody. Can you imagine what it's like? I've said this before. Can you imagine what it's like trying to be one of his children with multiple mothers and so on and so forth? Can you imagine what it's like? "Daddy, tell me a story." "Well, Kamala Harris is a devil." I mean, good God. So anyway, while Trump is putting out this poisonous negativity, the Democrats are trying to broadcast their sunnier outlook, you might say. And they are pushing the idea that voters with them in the presidency, voters could support their neighbors, their fellows, start being a human being again. First, they have to support Harris and Walz, and not just say they're casting their ballot because they hate Trump. Now, up until Biden decided to pull out, that was the reason I was going to vote for his reelection. Not because I really thought Biden could carry the load. I didn't, and I made that clear on this podcast. But because the alternative was so horrifying. But I don't feel that way now. And perhaps you don't either, or maybe you're just slowly getting to that point that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz represent something truly positive. Now, back to the misery of the Donald Jesus Christ God Trump campaign. They argue that their candidate is just reflecting the mood of the country. And the Trump Nazis are insisting that it's not this growing contrast in tone and upbeat attitude of the Democrats that's going to decide the presidency. Oh, no. It's going to be because Americans love and worship and admire and fall to the feet of Donald Jesus Christ, Trump God, him. And another Miller, not Stephen Miller, the Jewish Nazi, but another Miller, Jason Miller, who's a senior advisor to the Orange Bastard, said that people don't care about what Jason Miller calls vibe checks. What? Vibe checks. Ah, right. This little prick, Jason Miller, added this: that's not making gas or food or housing less expensive. End quote. Well, no, that's quite an observation there for your little twisted mind, Jason. That really is proves that you're very alert to what's going on. But one thing that good vibes do accomplish is to increase the positivity of people's attitudes, which is the beginning point of making things better, of getting the price of gas down and the price of food down and the price of housing less expensive. It's not magic. It's not mystical, and sure as fuck has nothing to do with religion. What it has to do with an improvement in attitude of doing away of negativity means that people all of a sudden can start thinking a little more clearly. And clearly thinking people can make political discussions that will lead to less expensive housing or food or gasoline. But of course, Jason Miller and the other little pricks around Donald Trump would never understand that. And worse, they realize that their constituents would never understand it either. So the question then comes up is just, to what degree is Kamala Harris betting on this positive approach and doing away with the politics on the Democratic side of being morose and depressed and down and hating the country and hating our neighbors and yada, 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 yada? Well, the fact that she's betting on a positive approach is evident in her decision to pick Tim Walz. And we know his personal story now, at least part of it. You know, he was a football coach at high school for a football team that had gone winless. And then when he took over, well, he took over as one of the coaches, this football team went on to win a state championship. I mean, okay, just a little anecdote. Just a little, story, a little something to add to the CV of Tim Walz. But it's true. There it is. And you have to admit, and I have to admit, because I've seen it now, you've probably seen it too, that the Minnesota governor is relentless attitude of being positive. And ever notice when he comes out on the stage, he repeatedly touches his heart. He repeatedly looks at the audience and smiles and waves and this big grin on his face. You know, I don't mean to say this in a demeaning way, but sometimes he looks a little bit like a cartoon character. He is so upbeat, so up-tempo. I mean, wow, just, hey, hi, yeah, I love you, and I love you. Well, when I see that with Tim Walz, I don't think, oh, for Christ's sake, stop. What I think or feel in that moment is, yeah, all right, yes, that's the way to do it, Mr. Walz. So, what Walz is doing with the high-fiving and the clapping and the touching his heart or his chest and smiling and grinning and looking around, he spins around like a little dervish on the stage. Doesn't he? He looks here and he looks there and he waves. Ah, yeah, I love it. But that's supposed to give supporters a jolt of new energy and keep the momentum going that Kamala Harris has developed after her replacing poor old Joe Biden. After he stepped aside and endorsed Kamala Harris. And I saw Biden, was it on, where was it? Yeah, it was on CBS Sunday Morning yesterday. I always watch that program. And he was interviewed, I think it's by Bob Costa, and it was just, nothing heavy or serious, or although Biden did issue his warnings about Trump again. But when I listened to Biden being interviewed by Robert Costa, who was definitely not trying to be argumentative or confrontational, but when I listened to Biden, I just thought, oh, my God, Mr. President, yeah, thank God you stepped aside. Because I can't imagine, first of all, Biden having another debate with this orange antichrist. I can't imagine Biden continuing as president. I just can't. No offense to Biden, the man. But he really is, he's reached the end of his political career, and it is so evident. And I am glad that even with an enormous amount of pressure, he finally had the sense and the commitment, devotion to his country to get out of the way. And I respect him for that. But anyway, back to Tim Walz. He spent the first week as the nominee to be the Democratic vice president traveling to swing states with Harris, while the orange Christ Jesus God Donald Trump traveled to places where he knew there would be a mouth-breathing, dribbling audience that would applaud and scream and fart and wheeze about what a great human being he was. Trump's ego is just, well, it's his worst enemy. Eventually, it will be his worst enemy. It will devour him. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. The Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.